Okay, thanks, folks. I got the call from Roger 3-4 weeks ago, and he told me what was the rest of the morning with obviously highly intelligent and accomplished speakers. As I was listening to him, I was thinking, you're looking somebody to dumb this down, and I said, yep, I am. So I don't know who's more insulted, you or me. I'm the one to do the dumbing down, or you need it dumbed down to you. But we will get cracking. Obviously, I'm still active in club management. Everybody in this room knows the paranoia that is associated with managing any team. And you're always aware of who's following what. Peter McDonald, my ex-manager down there, had reached out to him for maybe a wee bit of help this year, and he ends up now taking Killyclahar. So we're all very closely rooted. And in terms of the psychological safety thing that was being discussed earlier, I think Peter can take a few tips from that. In terms of what I'm going to run through, we're going to look at stats, the different roles. We're going to look at stats, particularly sort of context is crucial as we'll go through them. I just had to get onto my wee hobby horse, so we'll get to that in time. And then at the end, we'll sort of steer it back to sort of game-based, or us standing on the sideline and what I think. And I am very, very conscious there is a huge amount of football intelligence in this room. I do not know it all. I absolutely know that, and so it's just throwing a few things out there and provoking a wee bit of thought. My brains of my own operation is actually sitting down there, so I'd imagine he has a sniper, and if I start selling any house secrets, I'll be taken out very quickly. But looking at stats, there is simply an endless amount of stats. The ones flicking down are game stats. But then you could flip it over and you could run the exact same length of list looking at personal development and personal performance stats. So it is simply endless. It is a huge development in the game that wasn't probably there 15, 20 years ago and is massively there now. To try and get my head around it even for this, I looked at it in sort of 3 different levels at 3 different levels again. So there's the player, team and game level, and there's learning and stuff can be applied from each of these. But certainly if you try to go deep into all of them, you will just get, certainly I have got completely lost plenty of times when you really go digging down into these. But we'll run through some of them now and see what we have. Player level. In terms of single game, a player's single game stats, how much learning is there in that? Given the variables, we know that a player can play well, can hit shots, can miss shots, can be in great form one day, in really good positions, getting really involved in the game, and a top player on another day can have a complete off day. So in terms of their performance level, and no player ever goes out to play a bad game. So in terms of their personal performance level, in terms of learning or development, can we place massive weight on it? I'm not so sure. But for me, in terms of an objective performance, and I would think about this a lot for particularly younger players, or particularly those talented up-and-coming players that are going to have to deal with the pressures of senior football, be it at club or senior level. They have to develop a skill that they can rate their own performance. Before they speak to their mates, before they speak to mommy and daddy, before they speak to you, before they lift the phone and see any comments on chat boards, they need to be able to say, I did this well today, this wasn't up to my normal standard, I can improve that, and be flat and straight with themselves. All right, I have a girl at home, and she's coming through the ranks, and you know from the moment she comes in the door whether the game has went well or went poorly. She's gregarious, full of life, she's played well. Heads down, absolute depressed, played badly. What we're learning and what we're seeing now is she's playing on a team where all her friends are on it and their parents are on it. It's a wee county development team. She came in one day, she was down the dumps. She got a call from her friend, said, God, my daddy was asking about you. He says you were brilliant today. And she came buzzing back in again, flying. For her, if she's going to go on up the ranks and properly enjoy the game, that roller coaster of emotion, she has to get that more balanced. She has to be able to rate herself. How was I today? And no matter whether people are patting her on the back or kicking her, she has to be able to, no, I know where my game was at. and these wee type of things I want to work on. So single game analysis, I think, is useful for that in terms of, but there's limitations to it too. Several games, whenever you put a run of 4 or 5 games together, I think that's where there is real potential benefit. It does take time and effort to sit down and go through it with players, but I think there is real value to that. We'll look at it now. And then season, in terms of long-term development, again, it depends when you're doing it. If you're doing it right at the start of the season or right at the end of the season, you're pointing a few pointers, but by the time they get into the mud of the season, their focus might be off it. They're concentrating on winning a place, they're concentrating on playing well that game. For me, the ideal scenario would be, and again, thinking of those maybe up-and-coming players in a club, if you could link them up with somebody and you're asking them the question, where are you in 4 years' time? I always think whenever I'm listening to the Olympics and you're hearing about athletes and they're saying, I aimed for this in 4 years. You hear about professional golfers, ones that have won their majors, and something wasn't right in the game. They took a new coach, they stripped it right back down, and they built up their game. And yet, I know it happened in my own career, and it would be very common for players. Do they see themselves as a notably different player if they're looking at themselves in 4 years' time? Or is it just I'm either playing well or I'm not? Can you give them something? Can you work on this? And there's a longer arc. They're just trying to, I'm a great defender, but can I add scores to my game? That's not a 1 or 2 game thing. You might get a few more scores, but always in the back of their head, they're maybe looking at that thing. And independent of a school team or a club team or a county team, they're looking after their longer arc development, ideally with somebody in the club that they can touch base to. And they're trying to develop themselves. Because as a senior, you go through your underage player from, say, under 8s to under 18s, 10 years. Ideally, the teams that win stuff at senior level, you're the men that you're winning championships with are players that have been there 10, 12, 15 years. So you've got an 8 to 10 year youth career, and you've got a 12, hopefully plus year senior career. Those are your golden players. But they can't afford to be just going year on year. So again, the stats and that season sort of level review can bring to that. Going back to the several game analogy, so this is a sample of the figures that we would work with. This is one player. He is a good, very good, talented player. Okay, and he came back from county and he was with us, and this was 3 games in, and I sat down to talk to him. Okay, world of numbers, and we're sitting looking, and not do what Denise said and just ask, what do you see? So, and I sat down and I asked him, okay, I did ask that terrible question. I asked, what do you see? And he looked at his possession and said, okay, they're good. He looked at the progressive passes, and that's what we had called sort of that we're getting through a line, or we're making a difference. It's not a passive pass. It's not just passing out round an arc. So those more impactful passes. Turnovers, his shots, any comment his showcase shots, we could maybe get a few more of those away. Kickouts 1, yeah, he was doing well, no real breaks, but then that's not really his role. So we went across it, and he sort of looked at me, and he knew I had a point to make, but he couldn't really see what I was making. And then I said, what about the turnovers? And he said, yep, good. 0-0-0. Good. And I said to him, no, not good. You're playing it safe. You're playing it completely safe. He was a brilliant player, is a brilliant player. But he was taking the sensible 100% option every single time, passing to somebody else. But at club level, he's passing almost always to a player that is not at his playing level. And then that player, geez, I'll have a go. And you're thinking, no, I don't want him having a go. I want you having a go. So it was putting the pressure on him. No, stop playing safe. And I sort of said to him, I'll not be happy until I see 1 or 2 in that column. Because when I know he's doing 1 or 2 turnovers, given how good he has created a heck of a lot with the other ones that did work out. So those sort of, and that was a mid-season thing that you could turn to and use. The dreaded question for me anyway, as a player coming to me, what do I need to do to make the team? It frustrates me because on the one hand, it's a very common thing, we'll all have had it. They're sort of putting it might come across well, God, they're proactive, they're asking what they need to do. But it's also them giving you the responsibility that you have to tell them, and you have to, and if they're not making the team, well, you didn't tell me that. And also the answer is so bleedingly obvious. You need to be better. If you're standing out in training, I'm going to be selecting you. And but we can use stats. There can be the basic level stats. The next level, in terms of positive play, passive, negative, again, going back to this player, maybe some players are playing it too safe. The ease of stats, there's easy stats, which are the basics, and then it gets even harder, but it's probably the hardest ones for a certain level of players, the hardest ones to capture in terms of stats, is probably where the gains are. So it is exceptionally hard to do that with stats, but it's selecting your one or two things and then moving on from there. At team level, this is probably the primary stat we deal with if we think of post-game stats. In terms of post-games, the most common ones we have, obviously they're the ones we'll see in newspapers or on media. They're based on obviously the video, and so they're fairly accurate. In-game is less accurate. There's a smaller range. They're the ones we're basing the decisions on. Obviously, they'll cover the key components. And in terms of when it impacts, in terms of pre-season planning, that team level can be really useful. It can hone in, we need to be scoring more. And then you develop your training plan, and you develop maybe some key terms that you're going to use, and you're going to go back, and you need to, whatever you're developing of that, and that can be fed in by that sort of national level data. You're then trying to look, have we stats to measure that? Have we stats to give us answers on that? Looking at then a single game. So this is All Ireland final, obviously. We'll work our way through it. So what are we gleaning from this page? And my issue with these sort of post-game stats is, and I do it when I'm working as an analyst with RTE, that you're working with the result, and you're doing sort of a regression analysis. You're working backwards and proving to yourself where the answer is. It is not predictive. Okay, so stats are much more limited than we'd like to think in terms of predicting results. Okay, we can be those chairs in the studio in RTE, very clever chairs. Follow on hindsight. Okay, I am just too aware when you're on the sideline, it's very, very different. But these are the stats afterwards. We can see kickouts were definitely a massive thing. But again, coming into that game, the stats would suggest Donegal beat Meath on kickouts, Meath annihilated Kerry on kickouts. Kerry were questionable in midfield, bar that spell again Armagh. And so you would have thought, that's a straw. The stats would have told us Donegal should be all right on kickouts. In terms of possession and shots, productivity, so productivity is your scores per 10 possessions, which is a very in favour stat at the minute, and certainly really useful for looking at your performance level. But it's not, I don't feel it's particularly useful when I'm standing on the sideline. It's too slow to respond to what you're needing to see. Okay, so again, it's useful in the aftermath, and this ratio, the county teams will be at a slightly higher level, but you're looking at sort of 80% the best teams will be at, but you're looking in around maybe 75%, shots to scores in around 60%. So those are, I think they're very useful, but their real use is again in the context. What were they facing? And we coach by, I'm sure we're all in the same book, we coach by scenarios. We coach by, right, we're facing a blanket defence. Right, the defence is open, we're doing a fast attack. We're winning a long kick out, what are we doing now? So we coach by scenarios, but a lot of these stats don't give us the scenarios behind the numbers. And so in terms of interpreting them, it does start to run into a bit of a limit. In terms of turnovers, obviously it's massive, but for me, increasingly, we probably need to know on the pitch where that's happening and what's coming off that. And also it'll influence, obviously, in terms of the way that it does tend to be higher up the pitch, That'll influence your personal numbers too. This is then a sort of a deeper set of data on the same game. And again, some of this is useful to interpret it and others isn't. The biggest thing is here's the break ball, which Kerry were exceptionally strong on. And that can go, you can say that goes to hunger, but it can be in terms of the positioning and in terms of kick out choice. There's that as well. This is, for me, the most valuable, but again, it probably can be improved again, the source of score. Because when we start to look at this, the raw kick out the numbers themselves as a manager, if you're trying to change things at half time, or if you're trying to determine what you need to do afterwards, each of these all depends on the context. The source of the score starts to become more informative. And when I talk about trying to coach your team on scenarios, these are the scenarios you always want to be working through. So we win a short kick out, and if we think when we win a short kick out, we got to be working a shot. If we're playing really well, we're working a shot 80% of the time. All right. In terms of the shot side of it, I forgot to mention earlier. In terms of shots, for me, it's good and poor. I'll not count so much whether a shot is scored or not, particularly when I'm looking at opponents. If they're getting a good shot away, maybe it's the pessimist in me. If they're getting a good shot away, for me, I count that as a score. Whenever I'm looking through a video, that's an example of a score because another team will score it. There's no point if it heads wide. If it was a good chance, it was a good chance. The shot tracker, again, I've worked with this for a number of years. To be honest, never really felt it particularly useful, bar maybe showing if a team got a really strong start or had a bit of a collapse at the start of the second half, that type of thing. It's certainly something I'm going to be keeping a closer eye on this year, because one of the developments in the new game for us as managers and coaches, it has removed a heck of a lot of our control. Game management was always about, you could kill a game, you could slow it down, you could park the bus, you could do X. A lot of those tools, even the thing Armagh were brilliant at, that middle third fouling. Even that now with the solo and go is of less benefit. If you've got a man under pressure, you don't want to give him a solo and go because you're then on the back foot. But why I think what will be interesting for me to see is the teams that the momentum swings is massive in the game now. Those big chunks of momentum where teams are on the back foot, you can't turn off the tap, and they concede 7, 8, 9, 10 in a flash. That's a new game for us. So what tools, what way, what mentality? I think there's a mentality to that as well, because it used to be if you conceded that you were gone. Well, you're not actually gone now. You can have your own spell back. So you have to, and if you could bring that into, I know a lot of us are youth coaches. I was sitting back there thinking about it earlier. For a youth team, there's a skill to develop. That mentally, the players, what do they do if a team gets a run on you, which can really happen at underage level when it's really tough to get up the pitch and you're stuck at goals. And you're trying to teach them a skill, maybe, okay, how do you break a rut? How do you, first you just win the first ball. And then you do a simple thing. And you're trying to teach them that ability to, in the face of that sort of onslaught, when they're slipping down the hill, that they get the foot in, they get the slide stopped, and they make a stand and developing those skills. But I think senior teams, the ones that will win stuff, will have that ability, be it mentally or collectively on the pitch, they will have that ability. In terms of these are the frees and the turnover area, again, I think we always used to think of it defensive third, middle third, attacking third. Really, I think that can probably be ditched and we can go defensive half and front half. The game is now, it used to be a thirds because there was a lot of compact play inside the 45 one end, compact play in 40, and then a sort of a transition game in the middle. Inside a halfway line now, it's your 11v11. That's a game in its own right. Then it'll shift and you get into that one, and then it's 11v11. So where you lose the ball in that, or where if they're putting a high pressure, it's within that half of the pitch. You're under baller until you get out of it. So defensive half, forward half is probably a development. And then in terms of frees, probably one that we'd be needing to consider, rather than again the thirds, it's defensive third. There's probably a separate one for the 2-point freeze. Anyone within a 2-point zone is probably going to become a never event. It needs to be coached out of the team. Them's critical errors that you can't afford to make, particularly against certain teams. But you need to be coaching them for all the teams, obviously. Club level, so we'll play a game in terms of the predictive nature of stats. So these are just 2 recent high-profile games. So kickouts, team 1, team 2. Off that, I don't know, it's limited. Off that, team 1 win, hands up. Team 2 win, hands up. Okay. A wee bit more. Turnovers. Much of a muchness. Who are we thinking? Team 1, team 2? Probably impossible to say, heading for a draw. Possession. Now there's 3 really. Kickouts is massive. Turnovers is massive. That's the only 2 sources, if we discount throw-ins, of possession in the game. Kickouts and turnovers. You've now got that, and you've got the number of possessions they've had from that. So, core stats, are we any the wiser to who won this game? We're not. Shots then, first time there's a wee bit of difference in terms of the conversion rate, but not in the overall shots. Score, 14-12 in terms of scores. And then the scoreline, 19-16. So, with all the stats in the world, in terms of our ability to read it, in terms of our ability, if, like, and these might be stats that you're getting at half time, are we basing any decisions off that? Realistically? Probably not. Okay, there's just not enough information there. In terms of the shot maps, there's more information here. And this is where we start to see Scottstown. We can see the 2-pointers. As a coach, as a manager, shot map, I'm probably happier with Kilcoosh. That to me is a team that has penetrated Scottstown better than Scottstown were able to get inside them. Then tactically, Scottstown might be quite happy with that. So in the aftermath, when you have that, or if you're good enough data during it, which very few is possible to have, you certainly wouldn't be thinking of keeping men too deep inside and trying to push further out. Okay, but those sort of standard stats, you can question their actual value. Another game then, kickouts, more definitive of a difference. So who are we thinking? 1? Probably team 1, and then the turnovers come up. Who are we thinking winning now? Possessions, 37-41. So we're starting to think, okay, team 2 got wiped on kickouts, but they were the dogs. They won more dirty ball. Then we come to shots, and it flips again. So we are sort of very much building up the value of stats. And I face this regularly in RTE. You'll have a director asking you, right, what clips are we doing, what clips before we get to the end of the match? What are we focusing on, what are we focusing on? I need to know the result before I get very wise about what clips I want to focus on here. Because it's going to switch, and then you get the result, and then you look back, why did that happen? But as coaches and managers, it's not about winning games that you've played in the past. It's about the next game. Score then, 17-18. So team 2 looked in bother, but their shooting efficiency has been high. Scoreline. Then the issue here is that's the shot map. There's another map in terms of the turnover map. The turnover map, Dingle's massive number of turnovers. There was a huge clutch in the 6-yard penalty box of the Dingle goal. 8 of Dingle's turnovers were from drop short shots. Ben Carroll, one of the top young players in the country had an off day. So stats can betray you at key moments, and they are very useful when we're looking back. But if they're truly not predictive, then we have to sort of keep them in place. At game level, so this is more as obviously been talked about earlier, but like last year, Donegal, Kerry in the National League were all about single pointers, multiple articles there. They're not looking at 2 pointers. Kerry win the All Ireland by their 2 pointers. Galway were the 2 point merchants. They went out of the championship. They scored 1 2 point in their final match against Meath from a free. Zonal defence was all in until it wasn't. The athleticism was up, but when we look at the GPS figures, it's marginal. It's probably just changed in its nature a wee bit. The control is definitely down. This year, we'll see. Early days, but to recap on some of the things there, contested kickouts, greater variation in the nature of attacks, which flips to what we're coaching and managing, and the momentum swings. The county crossover to club is an interesting one because a lot of what we base on, a lot of the trends that we'll see, we base on what we watch in the summer in Croke Park, because they're the highest profile games. Our club championships are not played in the summer in Croke Park. So how much does the tactical things that are happening and set up apply across? This is the hobby horse, folks, forgive me. We talk about stats. We want to use stats to try and improve the performance of our team. We want to use stats to try to win. Everybody in this room knows you get your best players on the pitch, you keep your players on the pitch, you keep your players training, your chance of winning markedly increases, maybe more than those other stats. Approximately 4 players are injured at any given time, so that's for the long-term stats. You will have fluctuations of that. I have stood in groups where 50% of my team have been on the sideline, and immediately alarm bells were ringing. Okay, I'm a physio by background, so injuries are my thing anyway, but there is really good evidence for various injury prevention schemes. We are not lacking in that. Or the use of sort of sprints, regular sprint, max speed sprint training to reduce hamstring training. There is brilliant stuff out there, and we can reduce injuries, depending on the paper you read, 40, 50, 60%. The critical thing there, again, going back to the understanding of stats, it's very easy to start, okay, we're going to do this, and then 1 or 2 boys pick up hamstring injuries, but that's a load of crap, and you leave it. The science is there. Okay, so if you pick up 1 or 2 hamstrings, all in your head thinking, thank, I'm going to curse, thank Craig, we're doing that. Because if we didn't do that, we would have had double the hamstring injuries. All right, and that, but you have to do it. The other thing, and this is definitely hobby horse time, entrenched beliefs. I've seen this so much, I see it with patients when I'm seeing them in the hospital with just general conditions. I see it particularly with young players as they're coming through the ranks, and I see it with senior players. There is 2 really unhelpful mindsets that are deeply entrenched, and you'll have heard them or you'll have said them yourself. Don't train unless you're 100% right. Injuries happen when you train too much or too hard. Okay. The knock-on of that is those 2 very messages is telling children and young players, just be careful, as if their body is fragile and weak. So when they start to feel a wee bit of tightening up, oh, I need to stop, I'm going to get injured. We help them through it, but we know we cannot protect them. If we overprotect our bodies, they will break down more. There is very much a safe thing on both sides of this, but if we're thinking of a pendulum, I think the pendulum is well too far on this side. A talented player coming up through, I've seen several of them, super talented. They are the golden child of the future, 18, 19 years of age at that time when the schools looking at them, counties looking at them, clubs looking at them, they are the next big thing, and they are told, everybody, oh, you're doing too much, you're doing too much, you're doing too much. That is a core time that those have to build up that physical resilience, because the sport is tough. You read any autobiographies, Brian O'Driscoll's or Michael Jordan or what, they play through a heck of a lot. Is that absolutely perfect? No. But we know now that from this gents research, the more training you're doing, if you're consistently training at a higher level, your body matches up to the challenge if you pace that right. I was saying to the boys, I said, keep the boots on. Yes, there's limits. Not saying that, but I'm just saying the pendulum has to sort of shift. But if you get young player, that 18, 19-year-old talented player, and we be Tyrone, no, rest up, rest up, rest up, rest up. You watch yourself, you watch yourself, you watch yourself. They're going to really struggle when the demands start to load up. We know that in terms of the spikes do the damage, training they consider it as a vaccine. So if you're training regularly and if you're using that sort of high speed work regularly, you're a wee bit stiff, sore, you go out, you don't have to operate at absolute peak power, but you get out and you get your body movement. You're teaching your body, you know what, you're all right. Keep going, keep going. And your body starts to build the resilience. If every time you feel any noise, sit out, rest, your body is going to ring. Your body's set up, evolutionized to protect yourself. So as soon as you feel anything, if you continually teach it, oh, stop, oh, that's bad, that's bad, that's bad, then if you ever have to push it, championship time, you're fighting for your place, you will likely break down. You have not built up that resilience. Back on message. Stats at underage, simple and safe. Probably you could, on the one hand, you can think it's OTT, on the other hand, it's probably a potentially good thing, particularly going back to that training of objectivity, being able to weigh up their own performances. Encourage the skill of objective reflection, and it can decrease the focus on the scoreboard. I had a team the year before I took over Errigal management. I had the pleasure of taking Errigal on the 14s. I knew from early doors in the season that we were in the wrong grade. We had a decent number of players, but just size-wise, ability-wise, we played a couple of grade 2 teams early doors and got beat each of them in challenge matches, and we were going to be playing or trading grade 1. So I foreseen a difficult year. We didn't win a game. And it was tough, and yet the season managed to stay really positive, and we had a really enjoyable year. And we used this really simple thing here. Them aren't the 3 names from boys in the squad. Tick was a possession and a safe or a useful use of that possession. The X was a fumble or a giveaway of the ball. Okay. So I didn't realise how useful these would be in time, but it really did. So it really allowed you to focus in on looking for the wee signs of improvement, looking for the wee things that they could. So Jimmy Joe here, done well, several possessions, you can see, right, let's try and increase that. So that's his wee focus. Let's see, can you get on the ball? You don't worry about the X's. You worry about the player that hasn't any ticks or X's. So that'd be the first thing. I don't care about X's. You're looking for involvements. So that's the first thing. He's got a decent number of involvements, few X's, good solid game. Star player, flying Phil. Brilliant involvement, that's great. You're going to have them players. But you'd be pointing out to him, Phil, look, there's mistakes. Look, mistakes will happen, no worries. But what do you not want? You don't want one mistake followed by another, followed by another. So see, the next time you make a mistake, can you look at just the next ball, look, just get in, get nice and simple, get a nice simple play. Shimmy Shoo, not very involved, maybe one of the weaker players, but the brilliant thing for Shimmy, he made 2 mistakes, he kept going, and then he made a few good ones. So within that, just this really simple thing, you could always just find something to give the boys. We'd have a wee thing, we'd develop them, we'd circle if they're working on a specific skill, a left foot shot or something, they'd done something like that got a wee circle. Honest to God, within 2-3 league games, match over, scoreboard, not reading that great, there'd be a bunch of boys around Noel who was keeping the stats. Well, who got the most touches? Who got this? How did he do today? And we went on through the year. Still would have liked to win, but and not only you can ask them 3 good, 2 to improve. So it's still I use that sometimes as a seniors. 3 good, 2 to improve. They'd message you afterwards. It just gives them, okay, let's look for the positives here. You can get the children to give that to the parents. You can see where the wee child's mind's at, and work from there. So stats, absolutely. If you want to get into it, back to reality. So our job is to improve the players as best we can, develop the team, and obviously win games. How? The modern manager faces a reasonable challenge to cover all the bases appropriately. All right. And whatever base you don't cover, some fella in the stand will point out that you haven't that covered particularly well whenever the result goes against you. Stats are one of those things. Okay. But you have a heck of a lot to cover. So for me, the fundamentals are stats are descriptive and interpreted with hindsight. They have the knowledge of outcome. They help explain what has happened and help identify trends and areas of weakness and strength. We need clarity in terms of the definitions you're using. That needs to link with the game model. It needs to link with your video analysis. It needs to link with your training scenarios. And consistency. You can't go focus on one thing, focus on another thing. Focus on this, focus on that. And it has to be team specific. Your team will have its strengths and its weaknesses, and you need to do that. That's my best work on ChatGPT to get an intelligent supporter taking notes of the game, because they're very interested in stats and they'll remind you of it. There's also the flip side, the man over the wire with the cap, and he'll soon tell you what your stats are. I tried to get an intelligent supporter in other various counties, but it wouldn't give me. They're, as I've mentioned, their predictive ability is open to question. Okay, you will get people saying they'll pick their point and they'll say you should have seen that coming. But we all know as managers, you cover some amount of bases and it's still sport. And also, our game is defined by championship. Okay, so stats are brilliant for averages and trends. And if you're a very good performing team and your averages and your stats are good, you'll win most games. That doesn't matter a duck whenever you're beating the championship. Okay, so our game is based on championship, the very nature of championship. It's moments, and moments are not countable by stats. In fact, the stronger if you've got a really strong part to your game, just think Scottstown and the 2-pointers. What did St. Bridget's do? St. Bridget's give them their kick out to take out Beggins long, tackle them like dogs inside their half, between halfway line and the arc. I'm on ahead. We're sitting inside the arc. Took out the 2-point free completely. So as soon as you develop one really strong area of the game, if you develop a brilliant long kick out game, you know what the opposition are going to do? Completely give you the short and swamp midfield. This is the throw and carry half time. Again, this is just questioning the usability for us as coaches and managers stand on the sideline. For Malachy at half time, does these stats tell him, do we need to push on their kick out or drop off? Should we stick to short kickouts, of 100% on short kickouts, or should they go longer? The context is critical. We need to know what's coming off the long and the short. We need to know what's working out, or even are we conceding heavily off one or the other. Why are they getting more shots off possessions? Again, we can see that their productivity is better, but we don't know the why. And we'll look at it in the next slide. The levers you have as a manager to pull. I just sometimes look at these and I'm thinking, if I'm doing COCOM or something, well, what would you switch at half time? You're looking at the stats and the stats tell us a wee bit less than we think at this moment in the game, and that's why you need to decide what your levers are as a manager. We'll look at it now. Again, the shot map, are we okay with that? Is Malachy, is he okay with our shot map? He's getting shots from good places. He's breaking through the lines. So, for me, if we're looking at in-game stats, and in-game stats are different from those development stats. Effort stats, obviously, effort, energy, the team that brings the energy. When we talk about basic skill, execution and effort, very few games are when two teams are equal. Those things are what counts, and probably will always. Kickouts, you want to know what's happening on the long v short, not the specific numbers, but what's the outcome of them, because tactically a team could be offering you the short and your kick out stats might look brilliant, but if that's a trap, are your stats picking up that that's a trap? Drop off versus the press. Pressing, absolutely, we all would love, inherently would always love to go after it, but when is that right? Safety versus risk on overload. So again, it's are you getting players to gamble? They're open at that time. Do you gamble, or how much of a risk is in the back? Defensive setup, man to man. You can. So these are the basic sort of tactical switches. Obviously, we can choose to do, but you need information that decides. And it'll vary per team. It'll vary what personnel you have, your particular strengths and your particular weaknesses. But if they're running from all over the pitch, man to man, is that going to work for you? Zonal press, if they're launching ball in on top, is zonal press going to work, or you're going to want a +1? The high press versus the low block. If the low block, for example, Kilcoo and Scottstown were there, shooting from distance quite happily or getting fouled outside, probably Kilcoo could have dropped off them a wee bit more. But you're looking to see, one of the ways I quite like, and it's sort of, this is looking at from our attack, but the opposition attack, if they are hurting you from a fast or a slow one, but particularly the over, around, through concept. So if it's an over, it's a long ball in, well then that +1 might be very useful. That might be the one to go to if that's how they're hurting. If it's a through ball and they're running through you, well then there's no point sitting with a sweeper. You probably got to cancel that a wee bit further out and stop them runners at source. If they're running down the sides, you got to get your defenders aware of that, and that might be where that zonal press, where you're sweeping and you're moving off one wing to shut down the other wing. If they're hurting you on the wings, you probably got to close in the central channel beyond that. But again, your stats need to be able to, those are the changes you're thinking of making as a manager, but your stats have to be what you need to see. Just the basic numbers doesn't really tell you enough. You got to know how are they hurting me, because that will influence what I'm going to do. I know they're hurting me. I can see the scope for it. And then hugely, your key player tagging. That the Donegal Kerry stats, it didn't flash in red lights about Paddy Clifford. You'd probably see it standing on the sideline, but again, that key player tagging, so much of results can be based on the key players and their involvement, and you need to be able to spot them. So again, is your stats identifying? Finishing up, in the stats, absolutely, I think they have to be in there. I love looking at them, I love reading them, I love gleaning them. I think they poke you, they prod you, they question you. Have we got that covered off? Do I understand that? Does our team understand, and is our team getting to the level that they're able to spot that this is happening, and that these are maybe our moves to counter that? But the basics: work harder, play better, simple skills. The stats wise, it has to be simple and specific, and it has to be specific to your team. It has to be the players at your disposal. They are a great resource, degree of objectivity, and coaching and management is hard, whatever level you're at. You will be open to critique, you will be open to disappointed players, you will be open to the whims of sport, which is dejection or huge success. And stats give you, and sport will do its thing. They will not define games, and you have to accept. So you're using the stats to almost say, okay, well, I'm covered ashore. We know that we've made progress there, but we know in our heart of hearts we have to accept whatever the sporting gods give us. The use of your stats, there's a long-term development approach, those sort of big long stats and sitting down with players and that, but there's then game ones, and our season, our success and failure often results in our in-game ability. So if you can hone that, those are important stats to hone. And it's sport. If it made sense every time, it wouldn't be sport. Okay, so we're judged on those results, and you can be spending time counting the grains of sand on the beach as the wave comes in. All right, that's me.
Super.